Hi everyone. As we go into the section about community versus individualism, I want to talk just a little bit about the idea of how COVID-19 is the perfect example for the idea or principle of a collective action problem. Now, if you remember from the lecture, a collective action problem must result in a public good that cannot be excluded from anyone. So if a public good is provided, everyone must have equal access to that good and be able to receive its benefits without any additional cost. As an example, let's consider public roads and interstate highways. Not all of us pay taxes for the use of these roads. But since they're public and they're public goods, we usually can't be excluded from their use on the basis of whether or not we paid our fair share of road and bridge taxes. COVID-19 has become pretty much the same situation with the same problems that we have seen in other collective action cases. Since the solution to a collective action problem is to act as a group, and the benefit of that group action and group cohesiveness are the primary reasons that the public good can be offered or should be offered, it's the group benefits that best describe these types of problems. But in order to benefit from a public good, a cohesive group is a basic requirement. Your authors call this solidarity. This is where your author's discussion of solidarity comes into that picture. I'm sure all of you have experienced a situation where you have been in a working group or a group at school, and you're trying to work on a problem, or you have an assignment, and only one or two people really do the work, while the others sit back and do as little as possible. Yet they expect to get the same grade and the same rewards and benefits as those who did the work, even if those who did the work paid the price for it. Individuals such as these are called free riders. And COVID-19 definitely has a free rider problem attached to it. Now, I'm sure you know that the solution at this point to COVID-19 is, at least in the short run, actions such as wearing a mask, social distancing, shutdowns, self-quarantining, hand-washing, daily hygiene, and getting vaccinated. All of these are personal sacrifices and choices. Since most of you are young and healthy, there's a really good chance that if you were to get COVID, you probably won't experience more than a few minor symptoms like a cold or flu. But if you're diabetic, or if you're susceptible to viruses, or if you have a compromised immune system, or if you're elderly, then there's a much greater chance that it will affect you, and a far greater chance that it will either put you in the hospital and on a ventilator or in a casket. And that's the sad part to this pandemic. We learned very quickly that not everybody has the same level of risk. And we started to work as a community to socially distance ourselves. We shut things down. We worked from home. We had our children's distance learning. But then things just started to get to a point where everybody had thought that everything was over. The risk was over, and they got bored. And they got bored of making those personal sacrifices to address COVID. So they started not to care whether or not somebody else's grandma got hurt, or grandpa, or sister, or brother, or friend. They were only worried about themselves. And that becomes what economists and political scientists call the free rider problem. These are people who have chosen either not to wear a mask, or they've undertaken political protests to show that they don't believe in vaccinations or mask wearing, or they're being forced to do something against their will, and they're protesting. They stand on the claim that they have liberties. And they do. Yes, we all have liberties, but when it's something that's in the public good, do we have the freedom or liberty to say no in order to benefit ourselves and to place others in the community in harm's way? That's why our COVID response is a perfect example of collective action. Since the only solution to a collective action problem is for the people to work together so that they can receive that maximum group benefit that a collaborative solution can offer, a shared concern for the public good is vital. But the enticement to the individual is to maximize their personal benefit and sacrifice the benefit of the group. And that's where human behavior comes in. Individuals take on the mindset that, well, I'm going to take care of me and mine before I help you take care of yours and you and yours. And this is line of thinking, while it's to be expected, it's how people work. And while such a mindset is unfortunate, as long as there are human beings on this planet, we will always have a free rider problem. So how do we get around the free rider problem? One way that we do that is by providing incentives and punitive actions, carrots and sticks. For instance, we've seen positive incentives being offered by state legislatures that say if you get vaccinated, you get your immunization, then the state, the county, or even the city will enter you into a lottery. And several states have had big lotteries. New Mexico's got a $10 million one. And people have won large sums of money or even full-ride college scholarships for the kids because they got vaccinated. So we can give incentives, and that's a good positive step, but we can also penalize behavior through disincentives. But these can also put the public at risk, and that becomes even more of a problem because when people stand up and say, hey, I've been punished for exercising my rights, it can convince others not to trust the government or those who are working towards the public good. So, for instance, someone can get a ticket if they're not wearing a mask in some states or cities. But right now, a number of states, Texas included, mostly southern states, have imposed laws that make it impossible for a neighborhood, a city, or a county to make any rules regarding COVID that conflict with state law or a governor's executive orders. They don't agree with mask mandates. And if they're going to require masks, or they're going to be requiring that people be immunized before they go into their movie theater or their workplace or anything like that, the state will step in and prohibit them from such actions because they say, well, people have rights. But again, This is a really tricky subject when it comes to people having rights, because it's a generally accepted principle of common law that my rights end where your rights begin. Yes, you have the right to life and liberty and property, but so do I. So either we work together and protect everybody's health, or certain people are going to end up on the losing side of the lottery here. So I'm going to leave you with a personal example. I had a very good friend of our family who passed away last June, and he was immunocompromised, had had a kidney transplant, had been on a ventilator for some time due to COVID. They took him off the ventilator, and within 24 hours he was gone. He was in his early 40s or mid-40s, and he was not an old man. He was not one of the elderly. This is not an old grandpa that you were going to throw under the bus. But why should we throw anybody under the bus? That becomes the question. And I'm going to leave you with that question as we go into the rest of this chapter. And then we're going to see this question arise again in the discussion at the end of the chapter. So I hope this brief video helped you to apply the concept of collaborative or collective action with what is happening around us right now.